think it's really important that you get a win. A win, it heals everything.
The spears were ripped out, the fight has started, but that's a triple kill over to Tabs.
We will work hard to be the best team we can be.
Now, with the clock ticking as we close in on playoffs, Rocket is probably the team that could make that surge.
If we manage to improve those little mistakes that were costing us the games, I think it can go better. Yeah?
Rocket will pick up their first undefeated week in summer.
I feel like right now we're starting to gain more confidence, show the way we want to play the game.
SK now running wild, and a triple kill for Candy Panda.
SK Gaming, impressive performance, honestly. They managed to find a good lead.
Play for relegation is unacceptable, so it will be the mid-season push.
From Berlin, Germany. The crowd is stoked and ready to go at it at the halfway point here in week 6 of the summer split. As you can see, everybody is super excited to get the show going. There are awesome graffiti wall and the people just before they were teleported into our building and on the seats ready to go. There, Gambit having some fan interaction before the show. While they get ready for their day of games here today. They're Forgiven and Lothar, the coach from Giants, catching a little sun in the pavilion and discussing their first match of the day as they're up against SK Gaming. As you see them there entering the building there. Fox looking to do a better performance than yesterday, perhaps, on his Cassiopeia. I'm EpicSkillshot supporter, and joining me at the desk for a look at today's matchups are our crack team of analysts, James Stress O'Leary, Martin the Fish O'Lunga, and Trevor Quickshot Henry. Well, we've got a lot to talk about, and luckily we have 4 people here to do it. Let's get up the standings and take a look, because they're at the top. It is still unchanged. Fnatic is still undefeated, then Origen and H2K tied in 2nd, and then Giants, Rocket, and Unicorns of Love tied for 4th. And the one takeaway we have from yesterday is that the gap seems to be closing between the top and the middle of the table.
I completely agree. One of the big things we talked about excessively last week was the top 3 teams versus the bottom 7, and who from the bottom 7 was going to start clawing their way into those playoff positions. With yesterday's matches, the fact that Fnatic was pushed so hard, the fact that Origen lost and H2K not as clean as before, that gap seems to be shrinking.
The question for me is just, is this top 3 teams underperforming a little bit? Again, H2K, as you said yourself, they look shaky. There were some problems we haven't seen before. Origen, somewhat weird pick and ban phase and clearly didn't know how to execute whatever strategy they had in the game. Is this them underperforming? Because, again, maybe they become a little bit complacent, I'm not sure. Or is it just that everyone else picking up the slack?
That was one of the weirdest things, was the meta we were anticipating yesterday wasn't always what the top 3 teams were showing us, and they looked a little rough from it. So with the changes that came in, maybe picks and bans is where we have to look for those 3 teams.
Yeah, definitely. Patch 5.12 is a huge factor here. As you said, some teams didn't pick it up, but overall, we saw a lot of poke in that mid lane, a lot of Jace, a lot of Varus, and I actually really enjoy watching that poke come out.
You might be one of the only ones, Shucks. I'm not a massive fan of watching poke. I think it's incredibly to watch how teams set up poke. I think it's very strategic and very tactical when it's done correctly. But one of the things that I did like seeing is just how some of the teams played around it. The fact that Gambit, in my opinion, did it more impressively. I like seeing the split push threat on Cabochard's Fizz. I like sending the fact that Gambit put resources into getting Fizz ahead. I still want to see teams try find different ways to play around the poke, because it is very frustrating once a team gets ahead.
But that is what we are going to see the next few weeks, is teams adapting, finding counters. We're going to see probably hard engage coming in from time to time. I can see Annie as a support becoming very, very strong now, that we need this guaranteed engage. We saw Braum yesterday as a counter pick, obviously, to Jace. So there's going to be new picks coming into the meta that has maybe fallen out a little bit. And then also we have like this Maokai pick that we talked about so much yesterday. And I feel like the teams in Europe are misplaying with Maokai. I think he's still a fantastic, strong pick, especially also now with Righteous Glory and him being able to engage the fights. Teams just need to look at him as a carry, honestly, in the early game and say he needs farm. He needs to be in a one-on-one lane, or he needs at least to swap back into his standard lanes very quickly. Because if you deny him too much, he becomes too squishy and he never does anything. And that's what most of the teams in Europe seem to do with him.
Yeah. We'll see if teams strategize around those Pokems a bit more. And after seeing the new patch hit competitive play yesterday, we want to get your 2 cents in a tweet at LL Esports and tell us who is your must-pick ban champion on patch 5.12 and why is that. Don't forget to include that hashtag LCS, tweet at LL Esports, and we'll talk about your answers here later on the show. So let's take a look at the matches we have going on here today, where we will see patch 5.12 in action. We will start with a clash between SK and Giants Gaming. Then we have Fnatic up in a match versus the reformed Copenhagen Wolves. And we have H2K versus the Unicorns of Love closing out the day, which will be a fantastic game to close it all out here. But now the game at hand and our first game is between SK Gaming and Giants. Let's start by taking a look at the lineup for SK Gaming on the blue side. Freddy122, Svenskeren, Fox, Candy Panda, and Rated, and their coach Lukas Schenke. Well, SK Gaming coming off a heartbreaking loss, honestly, versus Roccat. And the reason I say that is because last week versus Elements, it was kind of the same scenario. So you have to keep questioning their shot calling.
I completely agree. And I think for a team like SK, they are showing some growth in terms of those middle to bottom of the table teams. SK is improving week to week. But the thing that we keep seeing is the late game decision making simply isn't there. I think SK play around objectives relatively well. They've actually got the second highest number of dragons secured in the league. They do relatively well in lanes for the most part, but the problem just comes in, it falls apart. The longer the game goes, SK are unable to push their lead, unable to press an advantage, and then actually close the game out.
And a lot of the reason from that is the way that SK have been playing that double tank setup. You know, you can see Freddy trying to carry there, but between the champions he's playing, which is still great for Freddy's style, and the way the rest of SK are playing, it's just not quite meshing when it comes to closing out a game.
No, that really has been one of the problems, and one of the reasons they can't close out the games is they run this double carry system. And when your carries then are underperforming, like we have seen before, both mid lane and AD carry for SK Gaming has not been okay. I mean, look here, last game, 21% damage to champions as a carry in a double carry setup is not okay. That is not acceptable. And then when you go late game, you have a hard time winning the team fights, or you get to the point where if you make one mistake, it can cost you the game, and that's exactly what happened against Roccat. So Freddy and Svenskeren together, yes, they play the tanks, and it's working for them. But they need everyone else on the team now also to step up and follow them.
Yeah, that Casio stat was from yesterday's matchup, and actually Freddy ended up dealing more damage to champions than Fox. It is a little bloated because he was one-on-one versus Maokai for like 5 years, but still counts that, you know, Shen was on the front line longer.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see what SK Gaming can mediate in their shot calling as they are up against Giants Gaming on the red side in this one with Warlip, Frederick, Pepinero, Adri, Godfred, and their coach Lothar. So, well, the Giants, yesterday, that game versus Fnatic, they put up a fantastic fight, even though they ended up losing. They're trying new strategies. To me, it shows growth as a team.
It really does. I mean, you take a look at the way the game played out for Giants. They were down 5k at 20 minutes, then managed to find themselves the lead at 35 against Fnatic, the team that we've talked about is so good at fighting back. I was really impressed by Giants and their resilience in the game. I just overall thought their game plan coming into it, whether you could say it was maybe exploiting something that's very strong on patch 5.12, but they're the only team that played the Ezreal.
Yeah.
And they looked good when it was working well. Macro level, maybe not so great.
It's been the thing, if you look at Giants, and the few times they have managed to almost come back in games against Unicorns of Love, it was the same. Late game poke champion in the mid lane for Pepinero is what they really need, because then he can take over the game. I mean, yesterday, this Runeglaive Ezreal, once it got to late game, his damage absolutely insane. I mean, look at this. 1,550 damage to champs per minute. Highest in the EU LCS so far. He was the only guy doing something for Giants when it comes to damage, because also Atri had this weird build on Corki. It wasn't enough, but that's against Fnatic. And when Pepinero is on, Giants can challenge the best teams.
He is on. Well, they didn't win the game, but he did manage to out-damage Reckless. And if we remember the last game versus Fnatic where he played AD bottom, at least he stayed mid this time around, but not pulling out the victory. Now, as we head over to the casters for Game 1, Candy Panda tells us why Pokecoms have the edge in the long run on patch 5.12.
I think right now the Pokecoms have a bit of an advantage, and the engaged comps have like the pressure on them to do something, because if they don't act quick, they will just get poked down. They're too low to engage, so it's over for them. So the Pokecoms always have like the upper hand, because they just have to sit back and poke. If they have good flank wards, they have like a Janna who can disengage, they're safe, you know, but the engaged comp, they have to make something happen quick.